Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan and I am a library assistant, and today I am doing my recent reads. So I haven't really read a whole lot, specifically this month, but in general the last 2 months I've only read 8 books. So I thought I would kind of join them together and just do like a general recent reads as opposed to a like monthly wrap up sort of thing. So I have my computer because I absolutely would not remember otherwise. And I have my ratings, my star ratings, and everything. So a lot of these actually, I think I only read one physical book between the last 2 months. Most of them were ebooks that I took out from the library, and I think I have 2 audiobooks on here. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So the first book that I read was When Things Are Set Right, and this was an audiobook. I found this because I was looking for audiobooks for my trip to Panama, and honestly, like, I don't know if it was because I read it as an audiobook or if it would have been different if I had read it in ebook or physical format, but I didn't really care about this book. It's basically this elf who has experienced the death of an infant, and she's kind of shunned because of she had this child out of wedlock, and the father wanted nothing to do with her. And this is all you find out like right at the beginning, by the way, so none of that is a spoiler, but it is a little bit of a trigger warning if you aren't into that, or if you're not, mentally in a space where you could read something like that. So she's this elf. She's, being forced to follow in like her father's footsteps, like work for the family business. She doesn't really want to. She's been living out in the forest basically as like a hunter sort of thing, living like a human, and like God forbid. And then she runs into this ex-slave, who's a human. He's running away. She's like, I'll help you find your family. And it kind of helps him to move on, sort of thing, from where he was. But yeah, I don't know. It felt very tropey, very, I don't know. It was a weird story, and just things were happening, and I was like, I genuinely don't care. So I only gave this 2 stars, and I probably could have dropped it to 1 because I couldn't get into it. I was like listening to it basically the entire plane ride there and back, and I didn't care. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care what was happening. There was literally like this big fight at the end, and I was like, well, if they win, well. And I think it is a series, but yeah, it won't be a series that I'm reading because I don't know. I don't care. I didn't care at all. So yeah, what a great way to start the year. The next book that I read was Garden Spells, and this one I gave 4 stars. And this was actually a reread. I had read this book originally from my public library, like back in my hometown years ago, probably like 15, 16 years ago, which makes me feel super, super old. But I absolutely loved it back then, and I just hadn't been able to kind of find it like a physical format. Like I always kind of wanted to buy it because I really liked it and like just read it again. When I was doing my like kind of like a TBR for Panama, I was like, you know what, like I kind of want to like just check and see if my library has this book as like an ebook, and it did. So I downloaded that. It's a duology, I believe. I've never read the second book. Personally, I find this book just ends really well. It doesn't need a follow-up, so I'm really scared that if I read that, it's gonna ruin it. Because I think that this book ended really, really well. And it's very much that kind of practical magical realism, but kind of very, very subtle. And it's kind of cool because it's like this small town and every family has its own little characteristics, I guess. So the Waverleys, which is this family, they've always had a little bit of magic, especially just the things that they do, the things that they make, that kind of thing. But you know, like one family, like all the men marry older women. One family, all the women are known for being very sexual and sensual. Just that kind of thing, where it's these families that have these little things that they're known for and these kind of characteristics and stereotypes that they fulfill. So yeah, so it's a really, really sweet book. Two sisters reconciling and creating a relationship as adults after one has been gone for years. There's a lot of character development. It's very character driven, I will say. There is a bit of like a tense situation. So I will say trigger warning for abuse. It can be a lot to read. It's not even a lot, but if you're not in that headspace, it might be a lot for you. So just a warning about that. But yeah, I love this book. So great. Very well done. There's a little index at the back on like flowers and plants and their uses, so do with that what you will. The next book that I picked out was Gentleman's Gambit by Evie Dunmore. So this book I gave 4 stars, and honestly, so when I was creating my TBR for Panama, I literally was just like, what books are available now for borrowing? Like, what is available now? And so it was showing a bunch of things, and this is one of them. And I was like, okay, you know, like, it sounds really great. Borrowed it. Found out later it's actually the last book in a quartet called The League of Extraordinary Women. And each book follows a woman, and they're like the first female students at Oxford. They're very feminist, very progressive, and just their romantic exploits and how they, you know, meet their partners, they're all husbands, meet all their husbands, you know, and all that stuff, as well as doing suffragette things. So this one, it follows a Scottish noblewoman. I believe she is a lady, and there's a little bit of like a interracial aspect, a little bit of LGBTQ, not like super overt, it's very subtle, and yeah, it's really cute. If you like that kind of historical romance, I will say the main character I feel like is autistic or neurodivergent in some aspect. Just the way that she's written, she's very logical driven, but obviously has emotions, but doesn't necessarily know how to process them, doesn't feel driven by those emotions. So yeah. So if you like that kind of like LGBTQ neurodivergent experience in romance, then I would definitely recommend this, especially if you like historical romance. So the next book that I finished reading, it was so funny because the way that I was putting all my holds in and then the way that things were showing up in my Libby app was completely out of order with how they should have been showing up in the series order. And so the next book that I read was Long Shadow, and this is actually the 3rd book in the, I guess it's a trilogy, but it's a Regency Fairy Tales series. And so there's 3 books, and this was the last one, and it showed up before the second one. I've read the first one. I don't think you can see it. I think it's too high up. But Half a Soul is the first one, and so this one kind of follows that. I will say the last series, League of Extraordinary Women, and this trilogy series, both are all the books kind of are standalones, but they all connect. So I didn't really have a problem that my books were showing out of order because it didn't really matter. But this book definitely, it was dealing with characters that were from the first book. So I'd probably recommend that just because the first book sets up the relationships for these characters. So in the third book, Long Shadow, we have an adopted daughter of Dora and the Lord Cercier, and so she's coming into her own. She's now out and having her season and everything, and obviously she's poor, like she was literally coming from a workhouse, and now she's adopted by these people and like kind of out in society. So there's obviously a lot of what's the word? A lot of stereotypes that she experiences, a lot of not great bullying. A lot of bullying. I don't know why I didn't just say that. She experiences a lot of bullying from the other ladies because of who she is, where she came from, her accent. And this one definitely has a much more overt LGBTQ quality. It is a women loves women relationship, but again, it's a fairly subtle one. It's not like how blatant some hetero romances can be. So again, if you like that kind of like, it's a slow burn, it's a very subtle, there's no like spiciness, it's very much that cozy romantic vibe. There is a little bit of a mystery, there's murders happening, and then there's ghosts that are also involved. So this is definitely more of like a spookier vibe than the other ones, I will say. Not necessarily darker, but just kind of like that overt like ghost story sort of thing, and dealing with like death and whatnot. So it does have that, and obviously magic and fairies. So it was just so sweet and a really, really good book. So highly recommend. The next book that I read, I also did as an audiobook. This was my other audiobook. So it was Portrait of a Scotsman. And this is the third book in the League of Extraordinary Women series. Again, just the way that things come up. I actually haven't requested the other two because I just have so many books that I've been trying to get to. So I had to stop putting holds at the library because I was starting to feel overwhelmed. So I will eventually get to those. But this book, again, it's a romance. You kind of have a marriage of convenience. Starts off with a little bit of a scandal and a marriage, and like a grumpy, I wouldn't really call it like a grumpy sunshine kind of relationship, but she's definitely more sunshiny and he is very grumpy. She's like artistic and he is a self-made man. I did like it. You have like an English woman and a Scotsman. She's learning where he came from. He's seeing she's not like a stuck-up lady. There was a situation at the end, like literally there was this really high stakes situation that happened, and I was like, great, that's the climax sort of thing. It was dealt with. And then after that, there was another situation that wasn't really climactic or stressful or anything, but I was like, this was unnecessary. Like, this could have been done completely differently, and if anything, it just annoyed the shit out of me, and I really was not a fan of it. So if you've read this book, you probably know what situation I'm talking about, but it literally happens within like the last 100 pages of the book, and I was not feeling it. So be prepared. So I only gave that one 3 stars. If it hadn't happened, I probably would have given it 4. But yeah, I was just not a fan. So the next book was 10,000 Stitches by Olivia Atwater, and this was the second book in the Regency Fairy Tales series. And this one is definitely tied for my favorite with Half a Soul, because it was so sweet and so cozy, and it had that kind of Cinderella, Rumpelstiltskin vibe. It has fairies, you have love, obviously. But she's like a maid and she falls in love with the Lord, one of the lords that she is employed for. And she, thinks she loves him. Fairy says he'll help her get with him. Chaos ensues, cozy chaos. And it was just so sweet, and the character development was amazing, and she has magic in her own right, very much a Sophie kind of person if you've read the books from Howl's Moving Castle. So yeah, love this one. Gave it 5 stars because I could not get enough of this book, and yeah, absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend that entire trilogy. Like, just everybody, if you like cozy Regency fantasy, you need to read this series because it's the perfect warm hug in a book sort of thing. The next book was highly anticipated. I was really excited to read it, and I was really disappointed with it actually. And it was Raiders of the Lost Heart. I gave this book 2 stars, and it just, oh my god, this book felt like a dumpster fire to me, honestly. The pace was all over the place. They're enemies to lovers, but they're actually academic rivals. Except it didn't even feel like academic rivals. It just felt like pretty petty over something that happened 12 years ago. But obviously, like, she was still upset about it. He felt bad about it. But there was, like, miscommunications. There was, like, sexual tension right from the start, which honestly, if you actually hate someone, if you are actually rivals with someone, you wouldn't have that sexual tension with someone. I don't know. Personally, if I hate someone, I hate someone. I'm not gonna be having sexual tension with someone that I absolutely despise and cannot stand. Like, anyway, so that was really frustrating. We didn't get any really backstory into like who, like, so they're looking for evidence that this historical, mythological maybe person exists, and there's no like background, like why do we care about this person. It's just maybe she's a descendant of this person, and it's like, okay, but like aside from that, why do we care? Like, who is this? Like, give us some context. Like, that's never given. There's no real context about their relationship until quite late, I would say middle of the book. And then there's like the drama feels like she really pulled from Indiana Jones. Like, she definitely references Indiana Jones quite a bit. And so a lot of those plot points just felt like she was pulling directly from the movies and like, oh, we need something like this. Let's throw that in there. We need something like this. Let's throw that in there. So the ending was a disappointment. I didn't care for it. There's like an event that happens, and it was just like, I was reading it and I was like, really? Really? So, not thrilled about that. Yeah, just felt very. I was reading or watching Olivia Reads a Latte's video where she reads this book, and she said that for her, the last chapter kind of redeemed the book for her. And I personally, I was like, no, it doesn't redeem it for me. It, if anything, it just sets it up for a possible series, potential sequels. So I don't know. Some people love it. Great. I'm glad that you enjoy it. I was incredibly disappointed, so probably won't be reading any of the sequels because it was just like, meh. The next book that I read, which was the only physical book that I read, this one, Royal Assassin. And that book I gave 4 stars. I actually started reading it beginning of January, and I had all these library books, so obviously I was trying to make sure I was able to read them. I wasn't like sending them in late, and especially when they're ebooks, it's not like a physical book where you can just kind of like, oops, like I kept it for too long. Like digital copies, like the DRM, the digital rights management, it will like shut you out. So that's kind of frustrating. Not frustrating, it's obviously there for a reason, but yeah, you can't like keep it. And especially like all of these books that I was reading had people waiting for them. So when I tried to renew, it was like, oops, you can't. So yeah, so this book kind of took a bit of a back burner, and luckily, like my friend borrowed it, lent it to me, so I didn't have to worry about um, any deadlines, any late fees, or anything. But yeah, so it took me a little bit to get into it, and I will say it was slow going through. I think this one was slower than the first book. These books are definitely character driven, so if you're more into plot driven books, I would not recommend it. The last 200, maybe 250 pages, a lot happened. Probably the most action of the entire book is in those last like 200, 250 pages. And I felt very much like on the edge of my seat the entire time. So yeah, if you like character driven books, if you don't mind them, I would give this one a go because it is really well done. The relationships and like the inner dialogue and everything, it's just so good. Robin Hobb does an amazing job. If you don't like it, I wouldn't read it. I gave this book 4 stars just because of how hard it was for me to get into it. But like I said, it could have just been the situation of all the other books that I was trying to read before getting to this one. But yeah, now I'm going to get into The Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, which is the last book in this trilogy. So I'm really excited to see how that turns out. But yeah, so those are all of my books. I read 8. Yeah, lots of cozy books, a few fantasies, and a few romance, but lots of coziness, lots of vibes. Let me know what you read for the last few months, what you're reading currently, what you're looking forward to reading, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!